Welcome to another episode of Unlocking the Upside. I'm Jeff Robinson, and with me as always is James, our resident skeptic and former buy-side analyst. Today we're diving into something that's been fascinating me lately, how digital transformation is completely rewriting the rules of scale economics. James, I was looking at some numbers that really blew my mind.
Before you go down another one of your rabbit holes, Jeff, let's set some context for our listeners. What exactly do we mean by scale economics in the digital age, and why should investors care?
Digital scaling seems like the holy grail of modern business growth, but here's something shocking. 84% of digital transformation initiatives fail to deliver their intended benefits. Today, we're exploring why unlimited digital growth might be more myth than reality.
That's a startling statistic. What's driving such a high failure rate?
Well, it comes down to how fundamentally different digital scaling is from traditional economies of scale. Take Microsoft's Azure cloud platform. While they can technically add infinite customers, they're spending over $15 billion annually just on infrastructure and security.
So the marginal cost isn't really zero like many assume?
Exactly. And here's what's fascinating. As digital businesses scale, they often encounter what I call the complexity paradox. The very things that enable rapid growth, interconnected systems, massive data collection, global reach, create exponentially increasing management challenges.
That reminds me of Zillow's automated home buying program. They thought they could scale infinitely with algorithms, but reality proved much messier.
Oh man, that's exactly the perfect example. They lost nearly $900 million on that program because they discovered that while data collection scales exponentially, making sense of that data often follows a much more linear progression.
What are some of the hidden costs that companies often overlook when scaling digitally?
Well, cybersecurity is a big one. Costs typically increase superlinearly with scale. For every 10% increase in digital operations, security costs often jump 15 to 20%. Then there's technical debt, which compounds like financial debt but is harder to measure.
And I imagine compliance costs across different jurisdictions add up quickly too.
You know what's wild? A recent study showed that for global digital platforms, regulatory compliance costs can eat up to 4% of revenue. That's double what traditional businesses typically spend.
So how are successful companies navigating these challenges?
They're getting smarter about how they scale. Look at Stripe. Instead of trying to build everything themselves, they've created this incredible API ecosystem. And this is crucial, they've invested heavily in making sure their infrastructure can handle the complexity.
That's interesting. So it's more about strategic scaling than just growing as fast as possible.
Precisely. And this is where AI enters the picture. While everyone's excited about AI's potential to automate scaling, early data shows that AI systems face their own scaling limitations. After a certain point, throwing more data at the problem actually yields diminishing returns.
Well, that certainly challenges the conventional wisdom about AI and big data.
Right, and here's something that really blew my mind. According to recent research, only about 20% of collected data in most organizations is actually used effectively for decision making. The rest is just taking up space and creating security risks.
That must have huge implications for how investors evaluate digital businesses.
Absolutely. Traditional metrics like revenue per employee or customer acquisition costs need complete reinterpretation in the digital context. I was talking to a venture capitalist recently who said they now spend more time evaluating a company's technical architecture than their financial statements.
How are traditional businesses adapting to these new realities?
It's fascinating, actually. Take Walmart's digital transformation. They've spent over $3.3 billion on e-commerce acquisitions, but they're still struggling to match Amazon's digital efficiency. The legacy systems and organizational structures can be incredibly difficult to modernize.
Sounds like there's a fundamental tension between the promise of infinite scalability and the practical limitations of managing complex systems.
That's exactly it. And you know what's really interesting? The companies that succeed tend to be the ones that embrace these limitations rather than fight them. They build what I call sustainable digital ecosystems, systems that can grow without collapsing under their own weight.
Do you see these dynamics changing as technology continues to evolve?
Well, yes and no. While new technologies like edge computing and quantum systems might solve some current scaling challenges, they'll likely introduce new ones. The key is understanding that digital scaling isn't about eliminating limitations, it's about managing them intelligently.
This has really changed my perspective on digital transformation. Any final thoughts on what businesses should keep in mind?
I think the most important takeaway is that successful digital scaling isn't about chasing infinite growth. It's about finding the sweet spot where technology, economics, and organizational capacity align. And that spot is different for every business. And
Thanks for helping us understand these complex dynamics.
thank you. It's been fascinating exploring how the digital age has transformed not just how businesses grow, but how we think about growth itself. Before we wrap up today's discussion about scale economics, I want to share something that perfectly exemplifies how technology is democratizing market knowledge. Throughout my career analyzing how businesses scale, I've seen how crucial professional-grade insights are for making informed investment decisions. That's why I created Insight One. Think of it as all my experience analyzing scale economics and business models transformed into an interactive learning platform. Using adaptive technology, Insight One makes complex concepts like network effects and digital scaling accessible and actionable, whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out. Find us on the App Store, Google Play, or at theinvestmentanalyst.com. Let's scale your investment knowledge together.